delicious-looking Zoe bars. This tempting beef stick recipe claimed to be a protein-packed snack with berries and flax, and it's dog food. Dang it! Hear me out. This is actually a fairly recent trend that's been growing like crazy for the last few years, marketing pet food just like human food. They're using the same catchphrases like gluten-free, highlighting protein benefits, and pushing premium ingredients in a way that is mirroring the marketing for our food. And some of the meals seem practically indistinguishable from human equivalents. Heck, my dog is on this super fancy diet of food because he's allergic to everything except me. And I'm not gonna lie, the smell is kinda tempting. All of this got me thinking, well, could we eat it? Not just once or twice as a quick meal replacement or gag for the internet. What would happen if we started eating pet food exclusively? Which one is the best for us? Could we survive, thrive, and keep our healthy coat of fur? Or are all of them bad for us and they'd have to flush you down the toilet like a goldfish? Well, stick around because there's one animal food that is surprisingly good for you and might be a go-to snack to share with your pet whenever you want. You might not know this, but pet food is regulated pretty much the same way human food. The FDA started overseeing pet food all the way back in 1938. Surprising, honestly, that they dedicated time to this during the Great Depression. Didn't have anything more pressing to deal with, I guess. At the time, most dog food was made out of horse meat. By World War II, canned horse meat was flying off the shelves so fast, dog food manufacturers were breeding and slaughtering 50,000 horses a year. So, at the very least, eating dog food was not safe for horses. But World War II changed the world at large, obviously, but also pet food production. You see, when metal for canning needed to be rationed, pet food was given the distinction of being non-essential. So, dry food surged in popularity, not just for people, but for pets. It was actually cereal makers who got creative and invented the dry kibble we know today by the 1950s. In the 60s, the Pet Food Institute launched ad campaigns about how kibble was the healthiest way to feed your pets, and the rest was basically history. It became the gold standard. Those standards have only increased over the years, especially recently. In 2011, the Food Safety Modernization Act created new requirements for both pet food and human food manufacturers, mostly focused on preventing the spread of foodborne illnesses. Since then, there's been something of an explosion of boutique pet food makers promoting health and wellness in our canine and feline friends, and a big swing in the industry in recent years has been toward human-grade pet food. For a short time, this was just a marketing buzzword. But in 2023, the Association of American Feed Control Officials, which oversees pet food label, came up with new guidelines for the term. According to AFCO, human grade denotes that it is technically fit for human consumption because it's both edible and was manufactured and packaged in a facility that met federal regulation standards. All of that to say, humans can eat it. See, I'm not the only crazy thinking about this, but edible isn't exactly synonymous with can sustain human life though. So let's talk about the necessary elements of a human diet: water, proteins, fats, carbohydrates, minerals, and vitamins. Every living thing needs some boundaries to support their internal anatomy and bodily function. How much they need largely determines their natural diet. There are certain things that humans synthesize or produce naturally in our anatomy, but more importantly, things that we don't, and this is one of the main reasons we, or any animal, ingest food in the first place. So all the animals in the animal kingdom can keep doing their thing. Raccoons can keep raiding their trash bin, cats can keep meowing even though they've been fed, and squirrels can do that super cute thing where they jump in front of your car for no reason. Stop doing that. We all know about the holy trinity of macros: proteins, carbohydrates, and fat. Understanding this macro balance will be critical in our understanding of the perfect pet food to eat. For the most part, people are familiar with the idea that protein equals muscle, but it's the how that's important to us right now. You see, your body breaks proteins down into amino acids. We need 20 amino acids to do our thing, but there are certain amino acids that we can only get through eating food because our bodies don't synthesize them on our own. How much protein do you actually need though? This can be all over the map, especially if you're in the fitness community. But when we're talking about survival, the recommendation is that somewhere between 10 to 35% of your daily calories should be from protein. What should make up the biggest percentage of your diet, however, are carbohydrates found in vegetables, fruits, and starches because they are our biggest energy producers. According to nutritionists, these should make up between 45 to 65% of your daily calories. Fats, which help us absorb vitamins and minerals we need for bodily functions, should make up a similar percentage of your diet as protein, around 20 to 35% 90% of our calories. Speaking of calories, the number is different for everybody, but the average human needs anywhere between 1,600 and 3,000 calories a day. If you're talking about a bare minimum for survival, dietitians and nutritionists seem to agree the absolute minimum is somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,200 calories a day. Anything less than 1,000 will apparently produce the same physiological effects as starvation. That's when you'll start to see all sorts of negative side effects like fatigue, depression, hair loss, excessive weight loss, poor sleep, and a weakened immune system. So, yeah, don't do that. Now that we have a baseline for human macros and caloric needs, let's get back to the burning question. Which pet foods could we consume? Well, the thing is, there were actually some surprises when we took a look at several common pets. There are a couple that won't be so good for you. Like, really not good for you in a you're gonna get cancer type of way. First up, it will kill you one. Fish food is gonna be a giant no-no. Seriously. For starters, fish need a wild...
Don't look at what's in front of you. Men go mad with watching you. Think of something different.
different balance of vitamins and minerals than we do, which is going to make for all kinds of preservatives we aren't meant to be eating. Most notably, sodium nitrite, which has been linked to causing cancer in excessive amounts of humans. On top of that, fish food isn't produced with the same safety guidelines, so fish products could have a higher likelihood of dangerous bacteria for humans. So if you don't want diet from fish food in your obituary, or your obituary in general, maybe steer clear of this one. If you are feeling fishy though, guess what has a lot of fish in it typically? Cat food. Because there's a ridiculously wide array out there, we'll hit the generic stuff first. What most people think of when they think of common, affordable cat food with potentially questionable ingredients. Anyway, Meow Mix. A cup of Meow Mix Original Choice dry food clocks in at 310 calories, meaning you'd need at least 4 cups of it per day to meet your body's most basic requirements. That comes with a macro breakdown of about 31% protein and 11% fat. It's also shockingly high in carbs. Not great for your cat, but actually ideal for us in the 35 to 50% range. Most big brand dry cat foods are going to be made up of similar components. Just like with human food, most of the contenders out there copy the leading brand. Purina's dry food, for instance, was similar but with small adjustments to the ratios and maybe different vitamin boosts. Now, at first glance, this actually seems like a decent start, but there's a big difference between us and cats that may be the killer here. Cats are obligate carnivores, meaning they can't synthesize amino acids and proteins from plants in the same way that herbivores or omnivores like us can. But it also means they can synthesize vitamin C in their livers, so they don't need any of that in their diet. In fact, any more can be dangerous. We do, unless we want to get scurvy. Another key cat and human diet difference, their bodies don't naturally produce the important amino acid taurine, so they need to ingest it in the form of animal protein, and they don't need as many carbs. They also require 2 to 3 times more protein than omnivores. That means cat diet macros should be somewhere around 50% protein, and only a tiny bit of carbs. Unfortunately, this means we can rule out another animal people have taken a liking to, ferrets. In a bit of a twist, yeah, at least for me, since I couldn't begin to tell you where ferrets are from or what kind of food they eat, ferrets are quite a bit like cats in terms of diet. Like cats, these adorable little hunters are obligate carnivores, so high-quality cat or kitten food is sometimes considered a substitute for ferrets to eat in the short term. I can't tell if this makes them more cute or more creepy. Regardless, chowing down exclusively on cat or ferret food, whether it's dry or wet, would eventually kill you. With fish, cats, and ferrets out of the way, it's time to take a look at man's best friend, dogs. The big generic dry dog food brands fall a little more closely in line with human diets. Both Purina and IAM's brand kibbles check out with our dietary ratios. These brands also have around 350 to 400 calories per cup, so like cat food, you're gonna have to eat multiple cups of it per day just to keep the engine going, which really isn't too big of a deal. On a 2,400 calorie a day diet, that's like 2 cups for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Flavor notwithstanding. Those golden macro similarities between dogs and humans shouldn't be too much of a surprise. Dogs, like humans, are omnivores, meaning they can synthesize the things they need nutritionally from both plant and animal matter. Dogs need more protein and amino acids than we do, mostly to support those shiny pink coats. Percentage-wise, their macros look surprisingly like ours, in a similar zone across protein, carbs, and fat. However, that doesn't mean that dog diets and human diets are exactly alike per se. There are some critical differences, which brings us to our other nutrient categories, vitamins and minerals. Vitamins and minerals fall in their own special categories, since they aren't food groupings, but rather are found in food. There are 13 essential vitamins we need for our bodies to function well. They're divided into two categories: vitamins that can be absorbed by fat, vitamins A, D, E, and K, and vitamins that can be absorbed by water, C, and all of these. It's critical to get a healthy amount of all of these, but the deficiencies most linked to fatality are vitamin D and B12, so they're arguably a little more important. Minerals are divided into major and minor minerals, depending on the roles they play. Major minerals include things like magnesium, calcium, potassium, and sodium, while minor minerals include iron, iodine, fluoride, and zinc. Like vitamins, it's important to get the appropriate amounts of minerals for any number of bodily functions. However, if you're keeping score, the mineral deficiencies that are most commonly associated with premature death are iron, calcium, and iodine. So dog food seems to cover our macros, but does it support our vitamin and mineral needs? Well, yes and no. For one, like cats, dogs produce vitamin C naturally in their liver, so it won't be present in dry kibbles at all. However, their metabolism is much faster than ours, requiring way more vitamins, so their food has to account for this. Forget those daily supplements, Jim Bro. Just eat some kibble. Duh. Seriously, most dog food is packed with vitamin supplements. The leading brands of dog kibbles we mentioned earlier are all supplemented with healthy doses of vitamin A, B, D, and E. Iron and iodine are also supplemented to a degree that should meet human needs as long as we're ingesting multiple servings, along with calcium. That covers dry food, but the place where dog food really excels over cat food, beyond just nutritional numbers and percentages, wet food. Because canned dog food meals are actually fairly close in consistency and ingredients to canned human food. Apparently, Hill Science Diet Savory Stew with chicken and vegetables isn't too bad, just like eating a human chicken and veggie stew. Plus, human-like ratios for 28% protein, 19% fat, and 44% carbs at 330 calories in a can. If you close your eyes, it's not that different from eating a Campbell's chunky soup. Oh, I'm gonna be sick. Plus, some survival blogs out there have done taste tests and ranked it at the top for its veggie flavor. But if you want to avoid a Scooby-Doo type mystery when it comes to ingredients, there's one area of pet food we haven't talked about in depth yet: human grade, which is where the real nutritional magic lies. Is it actually good enough for us to eat, or is it just more fancy marketing stuff? Again, the wet food is gonna have the advantage here. There's several really good options out there, and they actually sound kind of delicious. One of the best options.
The mission: sneak inside, give out Pepsi to enhance the food's flavor.
To Will and Diane.
Options we researched in terms of overall ingredients and human macro goals was Nom Nom brand's Turkey Fare recipe. The main ingredients: ground turkey, brown rice, eggs, carrots, and spinach. Dang! I just added all of that to my grocery list. This brand also has close to that golden nutrient ratio for humans: 35% protein, 17% fat, and 38% carbohydrates. That is a lean and mean pre-prepped meal. Similarly delicious sounding is the Farmer's Dog turkey recipe, the main ingredients of which include turkey, chickpeas, carrots, broccoli, and spinach. 33% protein, 18% fat, and 39% carbohydrates. That ratio, though. Seriously, why are these dogs eating better than the rest of us? If you're not looking for the cold stuff, though, there's also human-grade dry dog food to the rescue. That's right, fancy kibble. First up is the Spot and Tango Unkibble. Freeze-dried kibble that are a bit low in fat, but boy, does it smell good. This is the type that Genji actually eats every day, and I have to admit, I've thought about snagging a couple of bites. And I'm not the only one. Back in 2020, a man ate nothing but Munster Milling dog food for 30 days. Apparently, that guy lost more than 20 pounds and said he felt fantastic. To be fair, he was also the CEO of the company, so he was definitely trying to sell people on the health benefit. But hey, he did it and he turned out fine. In the short to medium term, not much would happen to your body if you switched over to your dog's food, according to veterinarian nutritionists. In a lot of ways, eating dog food is just like eating a small meal. This may seem like a slam dunk, but it's food theory. You know it's never that simple. Because I said earlier that nothing would happen in the short to medium term, but the long term is a different story. And we're not looking for the best pet food to snack on, we're looking for the best pet food to survive on. The big problem with dog food is vitamin K3, a synthetic vitamin in most dog foods which is potentially toxic to humans in the long term. So chowing down on this for months and months can cause your blood cells to rupture and turn your skin yellow. Not good. So back to the drawing board. And we're kind of running out of plausible pets. I mean, we could look at snake food, but that's a lot of mice, and you'd probably die of vitamin A toxicity. But not all hope is lost, because there is one pet food that's the key. That's right, your potential new secret snack, hamster food. Since the bulk of hamster diets include include things like seeds, fruits, nuts, and veggies, their bagged up pet food is actually not bad at all. In fact, it may be a bit of a grocery hack. Higgins Sunburst Gourmet Gerbil and Hamster Food is basically a bag of fancy trail mix with ingredients like yellow peas, flaked carrots, flaked corn, pumpkin seeds, coconut, raisins, apples, cashews, papaya, and pineapple. Plus, it's got vitamins D and B, calcium, iodine, and iron supplements. Given hamsters' caloric needs compared to our own, one 2.5-pound bag of Higgins comes out to somewhere in the neighborhood of 1,350 calories, or kind of perfect for a minimum day's worth of food, with protein, fat, and carbs all in an acceptable range, even if it is a bit on the low end for protein. Higgins comes in 2.5-pound bags or 25-pound bags, which would be a whopping 10 days worth of food. While this may seem like a surprise at first glance, it makes sense when you think about it a little. There's a reason hamsters are used in various trials and experiments, and a lot of that has to do with a physiology that's got some strong similarities to humans on a metabolic level. Now, that's not to say that this goes both ways. There's a lot of human foods that hamsters can't eat, but we can go nuts and chew on their pellets. Hamster food, who would have thunk? It's basically like existing on a plant-based diet, which a lot of humans are already doing. Look at Amy! Although, if you get yourself one of those human-sized hamster wheels, you'll probably need to be down to a lot more calories. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory! Bueno hecho. And hey, if you want more, make sure to click the link on the screen now. And as always, I'll see you next week.
The summer party for 5 is now 10. Just tap Target. Better get more glitzy nail polish and pancake mix. Tap the same day order and it's off to find those extra pillows. Delivery within 1. Just tap Target.
Lunchables. It was a time when whipping out one of these bad boys made you the coolest kid at the lunch. But lately, for no reason in particular, people have started to question whether all of these lunch kits are really good for kids to eat. And not just because of questionable strawberry banana drink choices. More and more of these kits are popping up for kids and claim that they're better alternatives. But while everyone has been arguing about whether X or Y meal kit is healthier, everyone has missed what's really going on here. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Food Theory, the show with a surprising twist that's hard to resist. And today, we're talking about all things Lunchables. The undisputed GOAT of lunchtime needs no introduction. It's been churning out deli meats and pizza circles since the late 80s. My personal favorite, the pancake Lunchables. Little discs of pancakes with syrup and bacon bits. Even though every time I bring them up, no one seems to remember them. Leave a comment down below if you do. But fun fact, Lunchables was originally created as a way for Karen Company, Oscar Mayer, to sell more bologna and other deli meats. But it also had the benefit of being a super convenient lunch for busy parents to pack. Create a delicious product and throw in some rad commercials, and it's no wonder that Lunchables eventually grew to become the sought-after lunchtime treat it is today. But not everyone is all aboard the Lunchables. In recent months, people have started to question whether Lunchables and all these pre-made meal kits that have popped up are all that good for kids on a daily basis. Regardless, they're still so popular that Mr. Feast, KSI, and Logan Paul have released their own meal lunch to just a bit of controversy. But today, we're not going to wade into that Lunchables versus Lunchmeat debate. A lot of people that are well qualified and dang near as handsome as I am have already done a great job comparing and contrasting the two. Instead, I want to take a big step back, because whether it's Lunchables, Lunchly, or any other pre-made meal kit, people online have brought up some legitimate concerns about the long-term health value these kinds of products have for children. But is this the internet being over-paranoid, or is there something in these meals that just have us running for the hills? Get your sauce tweezers and cracker stackers ready, loyal dearists, as we find out whether Lunchables are more Lunchables or lunch awful for your health. A good place to start looking when trying to figure out if a piece of food is good for you or not is obviously the nutrition facts label. And the first place that most of us tend to gravitate toward on that label is the calorie count. I mean, they literally put the thing in like 200-point font, so yeah, of course we're gonna look there first. And taking a look at a pack of Lunchables turkey and cheddar cracker stackers, you'll see that they contain 260 calories per package. Similarly, Lunchly's turkey stackums are just 230 calories per package, and that includes a mini bottle of Prime and a Feastables bar. Meanwhile, a third brand of these Cracker Kits, Armor Brand's Lunch Makers Cracker Crunchers, man, these names are too long, are just 210 calories, including the mini Butterfinger. And the low-caloric nature isn't limited to just the crackers. The iconic pizza varieties of these products are also between 220 and 360 calories per full package. So right off the bat, it's clear that Lunchables and all these other meal kits are super low in calories. Too low, in fact. Look, it's no secret that obesity rates globally, but especially in the United States, are climbing. And calories are certainly a big contributor to that problem. But, and this may surprise you, these meals actually swing too far in the other direction, being too few in calories to really be considered a full meal. Remember, kids aren't just tiny adults. Their bodies are growing and need these calories and nutrients to not just maintain themselves, but to grow as well. According to the American Heart Association, school-aged children should be eating between 1,200 and 2,200 calories per day, depending on their age and sex. According to the National School Lunch Program, or the NSLP, to be considered a meal, a school lunch is supposed to be between 550 and 850 calories. The only Lunchables that even come close to that caloric threshold are the uploaded sub-meal, the nachos, and the new grilled cheese, which is the only one that actually meets the bare minimum threshold for a kid to survive. But the point remains the same. For a kid in, say, the 6th grade to meet the minimum caloric requirement for a lunch, they'd have to eat around 2.3 times the amount of Cracker Stackers, which, while that sounds delicious, also comes with 2.3 times the other macros. Speaking of which, calories aren't the only thing that determines whether a food may be healthy, though, because while the calorie count in a Lunchable may be low, that's not true of everything in there. Starting with the good, a Lunchable's turkey and cheddar cracker stacker does come with a fairly impressive 13 grams of protein in that calorically small packet. For context, a child between the ages of 9 and 13 should be eating around 34 grams of protein per day, while teenagers in the awkward thrusts of puberty should be eating around 46 to 52 grams. That means that a Lunchable's cracker stacker, despite its pitiful calorie count, does provide around a quarter of the protein an average growing teenager needs in a given day. And in case you're wondering, Lunchly's equivalent comes in at a lower 11 grams of protein. But what they lack in protein, they make up for in more things. Why? What'd you think I was gonna say? But
Shopping with your parents.
Why would they sell jeans with holes in them? I'm going to speak to the manager. Mom!
Whatever he's giving, you should get Yoda.
Thanks to the Chase mobile app, your kid can shop independently while you keep an eye on their spending. So you can go from
We can be twinsies.
to
Our shopping. Saw you stayed on budget.
or in more things. Why? What'd you think I was gonna say? But turning back to packaging and other macronutrients, let's look at the fats found in a Lunchable. Despite fat's bad reputation, our bodies need some fat in order to carry out our daily functions. Fat is used as an energy source, just like sugar. And we also need fats in our diets to absorb some of our fat-soluble vitamins like vitamins K, A, and E. But obviously, too much fat in your diet can increase the risk of a whole smorgasbord of problems, including obesity, coronary heart disease, and even some cancer. And taking another look at both Lunchables and Lunchly, fat is very much on the menu. The nachos, crackers, and pizza for both brands contain between 12 and 21 grams of fat, with between a third to a whole half of that being saturated fat. You may remember from our Macadamia Nuts episode that I briefly took residence in Matt's pantry, but you may also remember that we spoke quite a bit about all the different types of fats. TLDW, saturated fats, and trans fats are considered the bad type that you should avoid. The saturated and saturated fats comes from them containing more hydrogens than an unsaturated fat. In other words, they are bad. The reason that saturated fats are so problematic is because they increase the LDL, or bad cholesterol, in the blood, and therefore increase your risk of heart disease. And looking at the nutrition facts for so many of these meal kits, while having 7 grams of saturated fat doesn't sound like a lot, that's a full third of what the average adult should be having in a given day. Kids need it even less. Again, looking at the NSLP standards, lunches for children are not allowed to have more than 10% of the total calories come from saturated fat. So it would seem that kids like Lunchables and Lunchly are saturated with hydrogen, saturated with fat, and saturated with an increased risk of developing heart disease. And speaking of heart disease, the nutrient we find in these meal kits that's the biggest red flag when it comes to heart health is, of course, sodium. And don't get me wrong, I love salt. We all love salt. It can both preserve our food and make it taste even better. While my potentially lukewarm take, it is the second most important culinary discovery in history. only behind fire. But all of that delicious salt comes with a catch. Eating too much sodium is linked to increased blood pressure and an elevated risk of stroke and heart disease. And you may be thinking, heart disease, smart disease, what's the big deal about that? Well, what if I told you that according to the CDC, heart disease is the #1 leading cause of death in Americans each year? More than cancer, more than strokes, more than listening to Baby Shark for 10 hours on a row on YouTube. A full 700,000 Americans die of heart disease every year, and our appetite for salt and fat, unfortunately, plays a big role in that. So with all of that doom and gloom, how do our meal kits do? Not great. The Lunchables turkey and cheddar cracker stackers contains a gargantuan 690 milligrams of sodium. Although strangely enough, if you buy the version with Capri Sun and a Reese's peanut butter cup, it's less at 560 milligrams for some reason. I honestly have no idea why. It seems like it's the same thing, but with a drink and dessert added. We'll go with magic for now. But either way, that's still super high, especially for children. 690 milligrams is over half of what's adequate for a child in a day. And while it seems like a no-brainer for companies like Oscar Mayer to remove as much of that excess sodium as possible, it's not that simple. Not only does that sodium make it taste better, something a food company obviously cares about, but that salt also helps the meat and cheese last longer in transport and on store shelves. Now, you might have seen that there's been pictures and videos circulating online that a certain other meal kit brand that will remain nameless had issues with moldy cheese on their pizza. At first, I thought this might be as a result of having less sodium than Lunchables and thus leading to them not lasting quite as long. But comparing the two big brands, that other brand has higher levels of sodium than the normal pizza. Of course, at the time of writing this, we don't know what caused this moldy cheese epidemic, or even if it's a really widespread issue. But we can say that a lack of sodium in the cheese is definitely not the reason. So yeah, regardless of which meal kit you pick up, you're also going to be picking up a big spoonful of salt to go with. And since that salt leads to an increased risk of cardiovascular disease, it might not be a great idea to send kids to school with one of these every day. But that doesn't matter, because what if I told you that children are able to buy Lunchables at schools now? Last year, Oscar Mayer and his parent company Kraft Heinz announced that they were rolling out a modified version of their classic cracker stacker and pizza Lunchables as part of the NSLP. Now, if you've watched this episode so far and are thinking there's no way that Lunchables can meet those nutritional guidelines, you'd be right. But that didn't stop Lunchables. Lunchables ended up creating slightly modified versions of their classic cracker stackers and pizza that allowed it to slide just under those NSLP standards. They upped the protein a bit and used whole grain in the crackers in order to serve alongside the pizza as part of a balanced school lunch. As a result of this modification, both the pizza and crackers count as meat or meat equivalent, a whole grain, and the sauce in the pizza seems to count as a red/orange vegetable. Go figure. And if you think that it's kind of bogus that Lunchables can count as a vegetable, we have a whole video where we deep dive into the craziness of NSLP standards. Now, you might be thinking, okay, having Lunchables sneak into school lunch menus might be lame, but at least it's healthier than the store-bought version. Well, I wouldn't be so sure.
Colgate Optic White's unique technology gives you a visibly brighter smile in just 3 days.
Purina One Live Plus reduces the major allergen and capillary damage, starting at
Analysis found that while the school version did have more protein, less actual fat, and even more fiber, it also had nearly 200 more milligrams of sodium than the store-bought version, where the levels were already concerningly high. Let's move on. I don't think my heart could take much more of this. Jeez! So far, we've talked about how Lunchables and meal kits like it are too low in calories, too high in sodium. What's next? You're gonna tell me that these kits also contain dangerously high levels of come on! Yep, according to Consumer Reports, they found that Lunchables and other kits like it contained concerningly high levels of lead, the super dangerous neurotoxin, the same lead that is especially dangerous for children. In fact, lead in children is linked to damage to the brain and nervous system, slowed growth and development, as well as learning and behavior problems. Countless studies over the years have shown a strong correlation between lead exposure as a kid and the incidence of violent crimes as an adult. So, how did Lunchables and the other kids do in their lead test? Well, considering I'm talking about it now, I think you know, not good. Also, I'd note that Lunchly wasn't included in the study because the product didn't actually exist at the time. But the test found that cracker stackers had 74% of the maximum allowable dose level of lead as defined by the state of California. Now, if you know anything about California, you know that they tend to be pretty strict when it comes to regulations. So being below that standard isn't too bad. But do you know what Santi's maximum allowable dose of lead is in my food? 0! Yeah, 74% is less than 100%, but I don't want 3/4 of my daily lead coming from 250 calories worth of cheese and crackers. By the way, the pizza varieties didn't fare much better, having lead levels of 73% and 69%. Nice, but not nice. And so you might be asking yourself, how is it possible for all of this excess salt, fat, and even lead to get in our food supply? Well, it all comes down to how they're processed. You probably know that Lunchables don't grow on trees. Heck, they'd probably be healthier if they did. Instead, it's what we call in the biz an ultra-processed food, or UPF. Essentially, all of our food can broadly be split into three categories: unprocessed, processed, and ultra-processed foods. For unprocessed foods, think of something like an apple, which is more or less the product in as natural of a state as possible, with little to nothing processed foods involve direct processing. This can include grinding, peeling, squeezing, or juicing to transform that product into something else. So, if an apple is unprocessed, something like organic apple juice could be considered processed. Then finally, we have ultra-processed foods, which encompasses the vast majority of our packaged goods you find in the supermarket. UPFs have been heavily processed. Ingredients have been added, and the original ingredients are completely unrecognizable from their quote-unquote natural state. To round out our apple analogy, an apple pie would be considered an ultra-processed food. And UPFs aren't just highly processed, they can also be highly hazardous to our health. One meta-analysis of 45 different studies of UPFs totaling around 10 million participants found a link between eating UPFs and 32 different conditions, including type 2 diabetes, sleeping disorders, and anxiety. Wait, you're telling me that eating pancake Lunchables as a kid is why I'm so anxious all the time? All joking aside, in general, UPFs and ultra-delicious come with, on average, higher levels of fat, sugar, sodium, and other chemicals. And sometimes these processes can also cause some unintended ingredients like lead and plastics to sneak in there as well. That's not to say that the ultra-processed foods always mean unhealthy, but 9 times out of 10, if it's ultra-processed, like the real foods we're talking about today, it's gonna contain higher levels of all that stuff that slowly takes a toll on our health, especially for kids. Man, we really let kids down, haven't we? And I'm not just talking about how Lunchables, Lunchly, and kits like it are ultra-processed, filled with sodium and fat, with too few calories and too much lead, because that's true of just about all the food we give kids these days. Although Lunchly might be at the top of foods now to give up. But I'm not here to be an enemy of processed food. This food is delicious, but I'm also an adult. I have all the knowledge to make the best or worst choices about what to put in my body. But kids are impressionable in more ways than just not to strong, but it also teaches them healthier habits and develops a palate not geared towards just salt and fat. So can't we just bring more healthy food into our kids' cafeterias and lunchboxes? Not always so simple. I mean, let's take a look at just in-school lunches. School cafeterias have so many competing forces that it makes it so hard to make lunchtime even possible, let alone healthy. Schools have to feed hundreds or even thousands of kids lunch and oftentimes breakfast every single day. So time is at a premium. Also, here in the US, the amount of money the federal government gives to schools to help feed kids is comically small. After accounting for labor and equipment costs, the average school has just $1.25 per meal to feed kids. Yeah, try making a quick and healthy meal for thousands of kids on that scale. It's damn near impossible. And, of course, the toughest critics of all are the parents. We can lay out all the healthy foods we want, but if kids don't eat it, then we can do and all of this also applies to our kids who are bringing Lunchables or things like that to school. Time, cost, and personal preference can lead to lunches that are tasty but lack what kids really need. And federal regulators, too, have to balance all of these competing interests and priorities while continuing to support healthier standards on child lunches, while also hearing the legitimate concerns in big schools and food manufacturers. So, is that it? Are kids just doomed to be stuck with subpar food that sets themselves up with bad food habits? Not necessarily, because despite all the struggles, those standards do continue to improve. The USDA's National School Lunch Program, the same program that allowed Lunchables pizza to be a vegetable, continues to update its standards to try and be healthy. healthier and healthier. Recently, they updated the guidelines for how much sodium can be in school lunches by around 10%. It's not as much as the USDA originally wanted to slash by, but progress is progress. The NSLP is also phasing in limits on added sugars, limits on sugar in cereals and yogurts, as well as standards for what nutrients milk substitutes need to have to be considered healthy. All things that are considered best. Because you know whose standards are as high as ever? Ours. The general public knows way more about nutrition than we ever have before, and there are a lot of things in place, like the nutrition facts label, that give us the tools to make smarter decisions about not just our food, but our kids. We talked about this bit when we did the Deadly Burger episode, but just looking at the nutrition facts label with percent of your daily value can tell you a lot about whether a particular item is nutritious or not. Less than 5% of something's daily value is considered low, and over 20% is considered high. That right there can already be a quick and easy way to know, oh, this Lunchly might be too high in sodium or fat or mold for what I or my very hypothetical child need. And if you're looking for quick and healthy alternatives to these kind of meal kits, they do exist, just at a cost. Not a sponsor, but one company called Little Spoon offers what they call Lunchers. Essentially the same idea as Lunchables delivered straight to your door, but without a lot of the baggage we talked about today. While still low in calories, their pizza contains around a third less saturated fat and about half as much sodium. And as much as I love a Lunchables pizza, this image of Lunchers pizza looks way more appetizing. Of course, all that goodness comes at a cost to your wallet. A big one. Little Spoon Luncher starts at around $7.29 per meal. Compare that to Lunchables at a much more reasonable $1.87. But you don't need to give an arm and a leg to try and create healthy meals. If time is no issue, then creating your own meal kits at home, perfectly dialed to what you or your kid need, can be not only a fun way to keep up that nutritional game, but it can also teach fun meal prepping and health habits to your children that will stick with them longer than a Cracker Stack. And speaking of which, what's the final ruling here on the healthiness of our favorite lunch treat? Are Lunchables, Lunchly, and other meal kits a disgusting product that should be removed from store shelves and never eaten again by mortals? Some of them. Would I recommend people, or especially children, eat Lunchables or Lunchly every day? God, no. But that's okay. Sometimes time or taste supersedes making the most optimal choice. Instead, it's about being as informed as possible so that you can make small changes that ultimately make you lunch able to improve yours or your kids' health. But hey, that's just a theory. A food theory. Bon appetit. And did you know that chicken noodle is not the thing you need when you're sick from school? Slurp that video on screen to watch me dissect why mom's miracle cure was one big lie. And as always, I'll see you next week.
Shoulda bought Dixie. These weak store brand plates are risky business.
Guys, we have discovered the secret recipe for TikTok's famous pink sauce. It's perfect! I'm not going really well.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory, the show that stays fresh without refrigeration. Today we're looking at the latest viral food phenomenon, TikTok's infamous pink sauce. This neon nosh has been sweeping the internet all summer, leaving the tickers, tweeters, grammars, and tubers all clamoring for a squeeze of the stuff, and then clamoring for the nearest toilet for the sauce arrives uninfected and spoiled to exploded.
All of this false propaganda that's going on the internet, I'm just a victim of clout.
Victim of clout, huh? Well, I'd rather be a victim of clout than a victim of botulism. For those of you who are unaware of what I'm talking about because you refuse to download TikTok in fear of our international corporate overlords, I mean, in fear of how much you're gonna love your time on the platform, the pink sauce is a condiment that was invented by the self-proclaimed Flavor Genie, Chef P. A private chef who somehow doesn't know what the letters FDA stand for.
What do you mean FDA approved? I don't sell medical products.
Who could have expected that the Food and Drug Administration would show interest in a potentially unsafe food? The food that she's trying so unsuccessfully to defend here is this unholy concoction, pink sauce. Basically, you took Pepto-Bismol and put it into a squeeze bottle. One video of her slathering some fried chicken with the stuff blew up overnight thanks to its unnatural color. Suddenly, everybody wanted to know what this thing was. And you know what? They're still wondering. Despite hundreds of bottles of it being shipped out, its packaging is absolutely riddled with errors. So while everyone in digital commentary land is out here telling you all the reasons that consuming the product is dangerous, which, let me be clear, it absolutely is, you should not buy this stuff and definitely don't consume it. I'm here today to instead figure out the question that everyone seems to skip the process. What even is the pink sauce? And can you make it at home safely, thereby allowing you to avoid paying $20 for this sampler of salmonella?
We're just gonna use our noggin and everything we know about food science, which isn't a lot, to make pink sauce the safe at-home way. Yeah. All the virality of the pink sauce, minus one key ingredient, the actual viruses.
In the past, we've managed to figure out KFC's secret recipes, so how hard could this possibly be? Well, off the bat, there's one key thing that separates the pink sauce from the KFC secret recipe. And that's the fact that, you know, KFC actually has a recipe. It's consistent. It's repeatable. Meanwhile, here's the first video of the pink sauce. And here's another, and another, one more, and this is how it looks today. The color is different in
San Pellegrino. Bring your best.
Try Nature Made, the #1 pharmacist recommended vitamin and supplement brand.
literally every video posted about the stuff. For a sauce that is purely branded around its color, the color isn't even consistent. Heck, I wouldn't even call it pink anymore. Sometimes there are seeds in it, sometimes there's not. Sometimes you can see chili flakes, sometimes not. This stuff is never the same sauce twice. But I hear what you're saying. People already have the sauce. They have the label. That label has ingredients on it and nutrition information, right?
I can't tell you the ingredients that I use to make pink, but it's pink.
No, you do kind of have to tell people the ingredients. Again, that is probably why the FDA wants to have a conversation with you.
An official flyer since the 1st of July. You guys are judging a prototype.
Nothing like beta testing your sketchy food product on the people who paid $20 a bottle for it. Okay, now to be fair, the bottles she's shipping out, people do actually have the soap label and a sticker on the back of the bottle that says nutrition information. Then again, I can literally slap a sticker that says that onto anything, and it doesn't necessarily make it true. And in the case of pink sauce, if you think that nutrition label is going to give us an accurate picture of what's inside the bottle, but no, there's nothing you can pay for that mistake. I won't go into this too much because this is territory that's already been covered by plenty of other channels, but the label on the back of this thing is so far from correct, it's almost useless. For instance, the label says that there are 444 portions of the sauce inside of the bottle. 444! I mean, do I even need to go further than that? Have you ever seen a food product with that many servings? The highest that I've ever seen is whipped cream, and that's only in the 70s. For almost any other condiment, a bottle of this size would usually contain between 30 and 40 servings based on the serving size of 1 tablespoon. And you can probably imagine that if they weren't able to get a basic number like that right, then things are really gonna fall apart once they start doing actual math. Like here, where the total number of carbs doesn't equal the sum of the sugar and the fiber. It should be 15, but it's instead listed as 3. Or what about here, where there's only 1 gram of fat listed, but supposedly there's more sunflower oil than honey inside the drink based on the order of the ingredients list, and sunflower oil is pure fat. So there's a gram of sunflower oil and less than a gram of all other ingredients here per serving? I mean, I guess if each of the 400 servings is like the size of a raindrop, then sure, checks out. There are also very few ingredients here that are dealt with the baking syrup and a sizable amount of garlic and thyme. Both products are perishable. It's also notable that this sauce, in every video, and every different shade of pink, always appears as a creamy sauce. It's okay, and it has a similar consistency to honey mustard, ranch, or mayonnaise. And yet, the ingredients list on the package contains nothing that would create a sauce that looks like this. There's no mention of dairy or egg products to be found that could serve as a binding agent that would give it this creamy consistency. Also, there's an ingredient here named vinegar. We actually have to get this in. So back to a shed. See what I mean? It just completely breaks down. At the end of the day, this isn't an ingredients list, it's a word scramble. So in our attempt to uncover the real pink sauce, we're first going to make our best attempt based on reverse engineering Christian label here. And be aware I'm using the heaviest of quotes when I say that. If we don't come out with something that looks like or tastes like the pink sauce, we're gonna modify the recipe as little as possible to achieve something that looks and tastes closer to how online reviewers have described it.
Can compare it to anything.
Also, just as a side note, for one of the nicest stuff, on her TikTok page, Chef P keeps uploading videos where she forces the sauce onto people, and then everyone's just too polite to say anything negative about it. Says the woman who practically refuses to try it herself. Think twice if you're being held here against your will. She says even before she tastes it, and then she refuses to look at the camera. Yep, you saw the caption. Reviews are coming in, and they are bad.
But this stuff is delicious, and I don't know what it tastes like.
You don't know what it tastes like, huh? Well, that, my very uncomfortably scripted friend, is what we aim to find out today. So let's try making the sauce using the list of ingredients and nutritional facts to figure out the quantity.
We're going to make the sauce as it's sort of written out in the ingredients and the nutrition information on the back of the actual pink sauce bottle. We'll explain in the video why we couldn't exactly suss out a recipe, but we did the best we could.
Sus!
This recipe is
No,
pretty sus.
Now we're obligated to also make the venting reference.
Vent.
Here I am! Me venting!
Oh, I see it. Oh, there's a vent on the floor.
In order to make a decent-sized quantity that we can test on a number of foods, we blended up 10 servings, so each part of the nutritional facts is going to be multiplied by 10 as well. Starting with the sugar, there are 11 grams of sugar per serving, and only 2 listed ingredients that have sugar content, honey and dragon fruit.
Nice. Oh, well, this is really serious.
It is a very serious
Andrew. Thanks, Andrew.
On my amazing shirt.
Oh my gosh, your shirt is amazing.
Wow, which is available right below this video. Quality game here.
This one's white. I'll see how you are. This one's gonna be red.
Look, it's like a loot box. Which one are we gonna get today? Here we go.
Come on, red, come on. Yeah!
We used 122 grams of honey, giving us 100 grams of sugar, and 130 grams of dragon fruit, giving us an additional 10 grams of sugar, thereby amounting to 110 grams total.
Just call her Chef P. Chef P as in Patrick.
Chef P as in precision.
Chef P as in... Once you pop.
These are harder to get off than you think.
Right? Okay, let's try to get ready.
Wait, okay.
Okay, ready? I'm doing the pop it off. Once you pop. One more time. Once you pop. The mashed potatoes don't stop. I'm so sorry. Mashed potatoes! They're a thing that exists. It's a food group. Let's start the actual clip. Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory, where today we're covering my second favorite food and my first favorite way of consuming potato, mashed.
Wait, you don't like fries better?
Better than mashed potatoes?
Scallops? En gratin? Matthew, for some reason, prefers the flake instead of the real potato.
They are real potato. They're just dehydrated potato flakes.
Listen, has a potato ever made this sound? Here, put it right next to your mic. Look at this. This shaking, crinkling sound.
I feel
No
attacked.
potato should be making that sound.
I'm feeling attacked. Here's the deal, friends. Thanksgiving dinner is the best meal of the year, in my opinion. Turkey, top tier food, mashed potatoes, second tier food, combined together, the best food. It's like the best Dragon Ball Z fusion ever. Or I guess for all you kids, it's like a Steven Universe gem fusion. What's happening? You can see. I'm up with the relevant times. It's unnecessary that I'm 5 years ago. I'm getting caught up with it, okay? Stephanie. Take the time to dipping the mashed potatoes and there's nowhere close to any of that? Well, of a food pack that started here, in which they take Pringles and turn them into mashed potatoes. On the surface, that seems like an insane concept, but when you get down deeper, it's incredible of your sense. Pringles are chips made of
In fact, they have the same first ingredient in both cases. So our little potato flakies, first ingredient is dried potatoes, and then also if you look at Pringles, first ingredient is dried potatoes.
That's going to the question here. Is this actually viable the way they show it on the TikTok? Is there a better way to do it? And then, once we've proven all of that, can we do it with other chips? So today we're going to determine whether or not Pringles' new motto should be once you pop the mashed potatoes. Was it? Not as bad as the mashed potatoes are going to turn out. Oh, you are.
Indeed they are. Gotcha, Matt. Well, before we transition over to experiment mode, let's start wrecking your stomachs. But first, let me settle one important debate.
Mashed potatoes! Mashed potatoes.
It's like your brother is anti-Tyson. It owns chickens.
Going out and buying ice cream and that, you was wearing only sunglasses.
I wear sunglasses at this point.
This is like an advertisement for 1983 what you're wearing right now. This white jacket, these like insane sunglasses. These are actually my eye surgery sunglasses.
Hello, Internet. Welcome to Food Theory. Show that, believe it or not, is even better after you pop it into the microwave. Theorists, if you've been with the Food Theory channel since the beginning, you know that I'm a man who values my cake efficiency. And it doesn't get any easier than boxed cake mixes, am I right? Wrong. I spent an entire episode showing you how the seemingly simple directions on the back of boxed cakes are, in fact, needlessly complex and redundant. You don't need those eggs there, people. You could be saving 5, heck, even 10 seconds every time you make yourself a boxed cake. Just think of the things that you could be doing with all that spare time. Like hitting the notification bell, mayhaps. Point is, I've been trying to reach the mountaintop of cake efficiency for the better part of a year. But if a recent TikTok trend is to be believed, there's still one hill I've yet to climb.
Pour your McFlurry into a bowl and add some salt and it's a McFlurry and it tastes so good.
Alright, TikTok, you had my curiosity, but now you've got my attention. Here I am making episodes about reducing 4 cake ingredients down to 3. Meanwhile, y'all are out there making 2-ingredient cakes using fast food and in the microwave? The lazy part of my brain is so tough. Now, just to be clear, 2-ingredient ice cream mug cakes were around long before Emma Canham's TikTok, but she definitely deserves credit for putting it on our collective radar in 2021. I mean, a McFlurry cake? Come on, that is just fun, and it sounds delicious, which is exactly why Steph and I picked up a McFlurry, some self-rising flour, and tried it ourselves.
What a fun festive cut. And also, not fast at all. There's apparently a miscommunication. See, this spoon is so awkwardly designed because it's meant to be plugged into the machine and then chuck around so that the topping gets distributed throughout the flurry, as it were. What you have served me here is a cup of ice cream plus topping.
After a bit of trial and error, we landed on 2 parts ice cream to 1 part flour and 1 minute 45 seconds in the microwave.
It's fine. I mean, it doesn't have a lot of flavor to it.
That's what I was gonna say. Is this sweet or is this red? Maybe make like a sweet red.
Right? It's very lightly sweet. It's not as sweet as the ice cream or the cookies in it would lead you to believe. I mean, it has the consistency. Yep. Look at it over there.
So, as I was saying before I was rudely interrupted, like it's a little bit firmer than a typical cake.
It's like a micro. If you can feel the effects of the microwave a little bit, but honestly, if you cook this in the oven, you might have like a really good cake.
right? It's not bad. Not bad for a cake that was literally made with 2 ingredients in 2 minutes of cook time.
So while I definitely think that TikTok's overhyping the deliciousness of the McFlurry cake, can't help but wonder if there's something here. After all, this cake did bake ridiculously fast, and it's not like the McFlurry is the only frozen fast food dessert out there. Might a different dessert make for a better tasting cake? Or is there something special about the McFlurry that allows it to react with self-rising flour in a way that the other desserts don't? And this, theorists, is what we'll be testing today. Food Theory has taken the McFlurry cake trend and amping it up to the next level. If there's another fast food dessert that works better as a 2-ingredient microwavable mug cake, we are gonna find it today. So strap in, theorists. Today's a fun one. Food Theory's gonna find out which fast food derived cake takes the cake for being a piece of cake to make. So in order to figure out which fast food desserts will and will not cake, let's first take a look at self-rising flour, which is not the same thing as the more common all-purpose flour. You see, self-rising flour is a bit of a cheap ingredient, because it's actually a mixture of 3 ingredients that you probably already have in your cupboard: all-purpose flour, baking powder, and salt. This mixture was invented in England back in the 1800s when sailors were using self-rising flour, or self-raising flour as the Brits tend to call it, as a simple way to make baked goods during long voyages at sea. Sort of like how I began using top ramen as a simple way to make food during my long voyage through college. So if you want to give today's experiment a try but you don't have self-rising flour in the house, don't worry. You can easily whip some up by mixing 1 cup of all-purpose flour, 1.5 teaspoons of baking powder, and 1/4 teaspoon of salt. That salt is a take it or leave it ingredient, by the way. Brits cannot be included. But what I want to know is how it works. How exactly is it that ice cream plus self-rising flour equals cake? Well, for one thing, a lot of ingredients in ice cream are redundant with traditional cake recipes. For example, here's a recipe for a basic vanilla cake alongside a recipe for brown butter ice cream. See how similar the ingredients are? Sugar, check. Milk, cream, check. Butter, vanilla, eggs. In the end, there are exactly 3 ingredients in the cake that are not in the ice cream: flour, baking powder, and salt. So it's easy to see why 2-ingredient ice cream cakes are a thing. The 2 cheap ingredients involved are basically matching halves of a magical amulet that, when combined, form a really typical cake recipe. Of course, not every fast food dessert out there is going to have all the ingredients present. The McFlurry doesn't contain eggs, for instance, and plenty of quick breads manage to rise without sugar. So what ingredient is actually necessary? Clearly, something in the ice cream is a reaction to the self-rising flour and causing the cake to rise. If we know what that one magic ingredient is, we won't have to waste our time or money testing fast food desserts that don't contain it. So what is the magic ingredient? For answers, let's take a closer look at self-rising flour and what makes it tick. The baking powder's role in all this is to act as the leavening agent, which gives the cake its rise. See, baking powder, which I suppose is a cheap ingredient in and of itself, is a mixture of baking soda, aka sodium bicarbonate, which is a base, acid salts, which are of course acidic, and a buffering material to keep the bases and acids from reacting prematurely. When water gets introduced into the equation, it sets off a acid-base reaction, which produces carbon dioxide. You know how breads and cakes have a bunch of air pockets in them that make it so fluffy, and also so great at insulating? See also our bread glove episode for more on this. Yes, I made an episode where I wore bread on my hands in public. No, I will not apologize. Anyway, those air pockets are formed from carbon dioxide bubbles released during the reaction. How do they get stuck inside the cake? Well, that's flour's role in all this. Flour, when mixed with water and exposed to heat, hardens. This is what gives baked goods their structure, and this structure is what traps the air bubbles. As for the salt, aside from adding flavor, it helps absorb moisture that in turn reacts with the baking powder. So there you have it. The only additional thing that self-rising flour requires aside from heat is water, which means that there are a ton of fast food desserts capable of making cake, at least in theory, in food. Alright, let's stop. You guys get the point. Long story.
Still taking yours?
Every day. Nature Made. Made to care for you every day.
Hey, it's Grant, and a little thing I love about the Chick-fil-A Smokehouse Barbecue Bacon Sandwich is that tangy Smokehouse Barbecue sauce paired perfectly with that original filet. And that brown sugar bacon, man, I'm getting hungry.
Real guest paid for their testimonial.
Story short, if a dessert is frozen, that means it has water. If it has water, that means it'll react with self-rising flour. And that means Steph and I have a lot of fast food restaurants to visit today.
My body is not ready.
I did an online fitness class this morning. Does that count? Hey!
Yeah, this is gonna negate that.
So I started driving us through town looking like Rick Astley post-eye surgery, and we nabbed frozen desserts from every fast food restaurant that we passed. In addition to the Oreo McFlurry from McDonald's, we picked up a classic chocolate Frosty from Wendy's, frozen vanilla Frosty. At Dairy Queen, we grabbed an orange Julius and a raspberry fudge Blizzard. By the way, can I just say how much I love that Dairy Queen shoots all of their Blizzard products upside down? That is commitment, and I respect it, DQ. Now, by the time Steph and I got to the Sonic Drive-In, we were kind of hungry.
Also, that is came here for
At Sonic, we ordered an Oreo Big Spoon Blast and
Get all up. Zero-calorie Diet Cola.
We haven't been shopping in a really long time, you guys.
A bit more than planned at Burger King, too.
So since the idea behind this episode is to, one, see if the McFlurry mug cake can actually work, and then two, decide if there's anything better than the McFlurry mug cake, we're going around all the different fast food restaurants to get their signature dessert and see, hey, what favorite fast food dessert was the Hershey's Sunday pie. So we're taking this ice cream pie and we're trying to transform it into a non-ice cream. Yes, there it is. Meanwhile,
Whoppers are so good.
We give Burger King hard time.
You get Tony's takedowns at Burger King, but the Whopper is so good. I like it so
So, one last stop. It's to a local fast food chain here called Cookout, and it is known for
They have probably like 40 different things you can mix into milkshakes. Their thing is milkshake.
And so my hope is that my go-to order of a chocolate banana pudding Oreo milkshake will actually be the best.
It does sound fun.
At that point, having exhausted every single cup holder in the car, even to an Ollie's car seat, we returned home. I was curious to find out whether Skip had forgiven me for the tongue lashing I gave him earlier.
Go on, please. Give me the repeats. Give me the repeats.
Oh, what's that tasty thing called? I think that might be some salt spice. Oh, that was very nicely done. Yes, of course, me. Absolutely. How is it? Is that good? Yeah, I'm gonna try a little bit of arcade too. Try to make a little bit of tell me what you think.
Causing Apple Dwight's unique technology gives you a very bright style in just 3 days.
Ultra Soft is more cushiony fit, a stronger tissue that contains the ink. Welcome to Dessert Pops
Yeah, it's not every day that a 2-year-old turns down cake, so I'm hoping some of the other contenders are better than the Curry did. Anyway, Steph and I proceeded to add self-rising flour to each fast food dessert. We then popped the batter into the microwave where I kept a close eye on everything. Alright, I could have probably paid more attention to mug cakes, but if I had, this portion of the video would have been way more boring. Anyway, we tasted each individual mug cake as it came out of the microwave. First up was the Oreo Sonic Blast, which turned out pretty much exactly like the McFlurry cake did.
Oh. Oh, that's nice. It's still not very sweet, is the thing. Huh. Huh.
It still tastes just like kind of plain cake. Like it doesn't have, again, a lot of that vanilla flavor, a lot of chocolate flavor, but it's nice. It's very good.
We then moved on to the chocolate frosty.
I'm very concerned about this monstrosity.
Oh no.
Looks like something out of a horror movie.
Whoa, hey yo.
If you have tryptophobia or that fear of holes, this is not the cake for you.
This is not your cake. Ooh, it's wacky. Is that the malt that expanded in like a weird way? Why is it orange?
Oh,
what
weird.
about this is orange?
Oh, this is weird and it smells bad.
You know that consistency that cranberry sauce has when it comes straight out of a can? That's what this is. Ooh, Wendy's, I love your Frosties, but maybe we don't make them into cake. It's like, okay.
I mean, here's the thing. Not great to look at. Texture-wise, on par with Sonic. Taste-wise, I mean, again, just plain cake.
The vanilla frosty tasted similar and had the exact same gummy cake texture. The soft serve ice cream cone from Sonic, however, had a great cake texture. As for the taste,
I can tell you that this tastes like a pancake. Which is good. Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. Pancakes aren't super good. Hold that pretty much
I like it. This is moist. It's like crumbly. It's crumbly like a real cookie.
Yeah, it's soft.
Ooh, plain vanilla cake is actually it's the winner. By far, hands down. Oh, hey, we got a good one.
I don't know what it says about 2-ingredient fast food mug cakes when the one that tastes like a pancake is a lucky winner so far, but that's where the bar's at, I'm afraid. Next up was the Dairy Queen Blizzard. When it came out of the microwave, though, raspberry taste was nowhere to be found. And Dairy Queen's other contender, the creamsicle-flavored Orange Julius, didn't fare any better.
So this is Orange Julius. There we go.
It's looking a lot like a rock.
Yeah, it's like the blob.
It smells like orange, and then it doesn't taste like orange at all. It just tastes like mostly cooked flour. Blah.
At this point, I was kind of starting to worry that we weren't going to find any real winners in the bunch. I mean, sure, some of these cakes were edible, but not what they set out to do. I was hoping at least one of the frozen treats would taste better in cake form, but so far, nothing was even close.
Second episode on a serious channel in as many weeks to disprove anything possible. She was hyping it up. TikTok, she was like, this is the most amazing thing ever. And my friends will try this and say it's amazing as well. Next.
Now, I'll admit there was a lot of pressure on the Cookout milkshake to perform. Not only was I rooting for it as a hometown favorite, but Cookouts was the only milkshake in the running, meaning it was sort of competing on behalf of milkshakes everywhere.
All right. Here. You know what? This one's all right. It has the most